Hi, I'm here with Millie, and we're going to be looking at the brain, and with a particular focus on neuroplasticity, which is Millie's area of research currently. It's quite an important topic to actually explore, especially with health and well-being, because our brains and what's going on in the wiring of our brains, the programming in terms of some of those neural pathways that get developed, and particularly in early childhood, have such a huge influence on how we are able to function.
That's right.
And so not just on how we behave, but also on our physiology and our bodies. So, Millie.
Yeah, well, I'm so excited to be here and talking on this episode because, like I mentioned to you before, the brain and neuroplasticity are two of my favorite areas to talk about. I love talking about the brain. I think it's imperative to understand the brain so that we can really understand ourselves. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview, maybe a minute, 2 minutes of the brain. I'm not going to go through all the specific areas because it's huge. The field of neuroscience is huge. But I will go through some of the building blocks of the brain and really what we can do to set ourselves up to make those neuroplastic changes. So as we were talking about before, neuroplasticity, the first bit of that is neuro. So we're looking at the neurons in the brain. Your brain is built of these neurons, basically. And the neurons are comprised of 3 areas. So you've got your cell body, your axon, and your dendrites. And what these do is they transmit electrical and chemical signals to one another to let each other know what's going on or to react to a certain stimulus. So, for example, if you stub your toe, you've got cells in your body, you've got messages in your body that are being sent to your brain going, pain, that really hurts. And then you react to it. But this all happens so fast, it seems like it happens simultaneously. But these messages are being sent via chemical signals, and they're also being sent by electrical signals. So it depends what kind of neuron it is. They're charged with electrical signals, but sometimes electrical signals can go from one neuron to the other without any neurotransmitters. But a lot of the times in the brain, they are using these chemical neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are a chemical that your neurons use to send messages to one another. So we've probably all heard of these in one way or another. So you're thinking of your serotonin, your dopamine, your acetylcholine, your there's lots of them that are going on, and that's what your brain is using to send messages to each other. And depending on the kind of neurotransmitter that is released, it can have such an impact on your body, it can have such an impact on your brain, but these are working together to send these messages. And basically, the more these messages are sent, the more neural pathways are created. So that's the foundation of neuroplasticity, is the notion of the fact that we have these neural pathways and they're the building blocks of the brain. So the more messages are being sent, the more neural pathways are being created, basically.
And neuroplasticity is, a very important way of actually not just processing, but also looking at change and looking at even therapy. So like cognitive behavioral therapy looks at how our thinking, our thoughts is actually interlinked with our mood, our emotions, our bodies, and also our behavior. And so part of the process of change for many people actually starts not just with changing behaviors. For some people, it's hard to change behavior because their mindsets are so rigid or strongly entrenched in certain thinking patterns. So these neural pathways are very embedded ways of thinking, and that can be problematic when you're wanting to change. You actually have to address your thinking patterns to be able to change your behaviors. So this is an exciting approach to change, an exciting approach to addressing core issues from everything as as broad as your relationship with food, how, even dieting, why it's very difficult to lose weight, because you might change your behavior, but for long-term success and long-term outcomes, you might actually need to address your thinking patterns. And so there's all kinds of ways that our mindsets influence our lifestyles and the way we live, from the way we from our relationships, and even to things like trauma. And trauma is one of those big areas where there's been a huge impact on the brain, and so we'll be exploring that too.
Yeah.